Okay, I'd like to welcome you all to the fifth presentation of the 2015 Spring Drought Forum. I'm glad to see so many of you here. I brag all the time that District 1 is the most informed district in Tuolumne County, so thank you for being here. We will have a number of presentations, and at the end of that, there will be opportunity for questions and answers. So with that, I want to go ahead and get started. Our first presentation will be a panel including Tom Scesa, the General Manager of TUD, Lisa Westbrook, TUD Public Relations, correct? And Tom Trott with the Twain Harte Community Service District.
Thank you, Sherri, very much. Well, I am Tom Scesa. I am the General Manager for Tuolumne Utilities District, and Sherri's absolutely correct. You guys have beat the record of attendees by a couple of times. So congratulations, and I rode up with some of you, and I heard the word, we want to be informed, so I appreciate that. I'm going to start out with just a little bit of information about where you get your water and what we did last year and a couple other informational things, and then Lisa and Tom will talk about what you can do for this year. So if you haven't seen this before, this is a great map of our system. And I'm sure most of you know, I hope, that we get our water from Pinecrest Reservoir. Now, Pinecrest Reservoir was built for the one purpose only, power generation. But through a contract with PG&E, we enjoyed able to get water out of there for consumptive water. And they take water out of the South Fork of the Stanislaus River here into the Philadelphia diversion and generate power. And that's why that system was built, and that's their goal in life, which it sometimes put them at odds with our desire to have drinking water supply. But most of you think about Lyons as our storage of our water coming out through the main canal. Here's Twain Harte. Now, 5,500 acre feet and 18,300 acre feet, an acre foot of water, the amount of water, volume, an acre of land, 1 foot deep. Why in the world do water districts talk about acre feet, cubic feet per second, gallons, and all these other crazy terms? Acre feet comes back to why most water districts were created in California. Irrigation. How much water do you need to put on an acre of land is still a common measurement, and it's measured usually in inches or feet. So an acre foot is about 325,000 gallons, and the average TUD customer, 3 people can survive on 1 acre foot for a year. That's our normal consumption, to put it in perspective. So we have access to these 2 reservoirs. In our county, there's about 5.5 million acre feet that go through on a normal year. New Maloney's is 2.4 million acre feet. Don Pedro's right around 2 million acre feet. Now on this map, up here in the corner is Lyons again, and this kind of magenta line is the PG&E main canal down through its penstock to its powerhouse out at the end of Lyons Bald Mountain Road. That's why Lyons exists. Although the miners used it, now that PG&E owns and controls it, it's for power generation there at that power plant. That power plant was built in about 1898 for power generation to the city of San Francisco. But we continue to maintain a large ditch system, about 72 miles, showing all these blue lines here. And we do that because each one of these red dots represent a water treatment plant. So when you get your water from TUD, if you do, it's going through one of our treatment plants, but it started at either Lyons and or Pinecrest. So it always bothers me when I see all those little boys swimming in Pinecrest. So the biggest reservoir we get to deal with normally is our snowpack. And this chart gives you an idea about how our snowpacks have been. Every year, PG&E, Department of Water Resources, and other agencies go up at various times of the year, and we measure snowpack. And that snowpack then helps us predict how much water is going to come down and fill our reservoirs. And normally, even last year, we do pretty well because our reservoirs fill to their capacity, and actually some spills over, more than what we're taking out at the time. But this year, that's not going to happen. And that's what makes this year a little bit unique. Well, like real unique. According to PG&E records, it has never happened at Pinecrest to not fill and spill. But when you look at this chart, 2015, April 1st is normally the snow survey that has the most snow measurement. It's when we bank on our snow. That's our best one. Well, this year we were at 5% of normal. But if you look at this chart, you can see it starting at 12. We've got, since 2012, we're in bad shape, even at 52%, not the best. But it did allow us to fill and spill. And here's a visual representation of that. Your picture on the right being 2010, and the one on the left being 2015. That's one of the great things about satellites. And being an engineer, we got to have a chart. So here's our chart. Tells us all this great news. This represents these 5 stations that have been monitored for a number of years. And picking 5 locations helps you get a better average in case a storm tends to focus on one area or another. But a normal water year is this blue kind of shaded area here. And that's an average from 1956 to 2005. And then we have some of our driest years, 23 and 24, 76, 77 down here at 15.4. Well, we just got up to 16 inches with this last weekend's worth of storms. So that's good. We're doing better. Not the best, not anywhere near average, but it gives you an indication of where we stand from a historical perspective. Now, our governor on April 1st made a declaration, and the reason this picture is relevant is that he's standing at about 6,800 feet in elevation, and normally that's the spot for a snow survey in April. He should be saying 3 or 4 feet of snow right there. And when I look at this picture, I see people in not really warm jackets. The cameraman here closest to us, he just looks like he's got a long sleeve shirt on, so it's really not even cold, let alone there's no snow. But these have been done for a number of decades, but this is what he put forward and got the State Water Resources Control Board to impose mandatory restrictions in order to achieve a 25% statewide reduction. What they've done since then is they made it clear what they meant by statewide. For those of us in this county, for me, it was kind of rewarding that for once, or as opposed to last year, everyone got to conserve, had to conserve. And depending on how much people use or not, they conserve on different scales. And if you go on the internet, you can find a lot of interesting articles about Southern California squawking about trying to conserve 35% or more, and they think it's impossible. But all of you know that's real possible, because last year, for the whole year, you saved 32% above 2013. So when the state talks about a conservation goal, it's compared to 2013, not 14. Excuse me. So where's our water storage right now? Like the first drawing, Pinecrest has 18,300. We're about 15,600. We hope with what little is left up there, we can get up to about 90% full. Normally, the reservoir would be full and spilling, overtopping, until sometime in late June, early July. This year, we're not even going to get to full before it starts going downhill. Oops. Lyons currently is at 4,500 as compared to 5,500. And what makes that a little bit unfortunate for us is that the state has put on what they call curtailments on Lyons Reservoir. They have not placed them on Pinecrest yet. And what that means is on the date that they picked, about a week ago, Lyons Reservoir cannot fill any more than it was full that day. The water that comes into it must be released into the river or into a diversion. So we're trying to fill up everything we can, Phoenix being the principal one. And PG&E is going to have to let that water out and go down the river. And just as a point of interest, you've probably all heard about the fish flows coming out of New Maloney's and people complaining and make a big deal out of it. Last year, when they were releasing water of New Maloney's on an average day, it was the entire amount in Lyons in one day, to put it in perspective. And when they really got going and were leaving out a lot of water, they would dump Pinecrest twice in one day. So to give you an idea how big New Maloney's is and how much water they can put out of it. Now Barry's going to talk about fire impacts, but for me this is very sad to see that our part of the world is in above normal significant wildfire potential. And he'll get into that more importantly, but we look at a lot of different things, and that's one of the things we concern ourselves about. Now, last year we received a little over $750,000 in emergency drought funding. We got these grants to help do projects to ensure that we would get through last year. And this is a listing of them, and they're very important. Matlow Reservoir was particularly important for us because it ensured that we could provide water to the CalFire air attack base. If the main canal goes down, we need to keep that air attack base up and functional if there's a fire going on anywhere in the Central Sierra. It's a broad-based asset. The Melville well was a well that was developed or acquired by the county in the 1980s, but never put to significant use because it has high concentrations of iron and manganese. We designed and built a water treatment plant to address that and got the funding for it. The New Maloney's project is our pump stations that were built by Sonora Mining down in the New Maloney's reservoir, and we have historically used them for 2 to 3 days a year to keep them functioning. But when we thought we would have to run them for weeks at a time, we wanted to make some improvements, and we got the state to fund that. Unfortunately, that's not going to work out so well for this year. Those pumps are under roughly 20-some feet of mud/silt that has moved down. As the reservoir has retracted, this silt has come down with it. If you've ever been the inlet to a reservoir where a stream hits that still water, it deposits all of its silt. And as New Maloney's has retracted, it's brought that silt with it and has encapsulated that pump, and it's non-functional. So we're having to look at options on how to either clean it, replace it, or move it. So for this year's drought, conservation plays a key role again, because that's what helped us get by and have more water in storage. We would have been even worse off significantly if all of you hadn't conserved water and we hadn't been able to keep some water that we had allocated to us by PG&E in Pinecrest for the winter. So that's important. We're looking for approval from the state board. From some of you might be aware of the lake level study it talks about, where we're having a bit of a conflict with the recreational interest at Pinecrest, restricting our ability to take water out of Pinecrest before Labor Day. And right now, the mitigated negative deck is out, and it's favorable to the water supply for this community, so I hope it continues, and we'll take efforts to do that. On the long term, we're looking to expand a reservoir or build a reservoir up in the Twain Harte area that'll allow us to save water on the ditches during winter times that we don't have another place to store it. So the last thing I want to talk about is public engagement. Through this drought, we've been reading a lot of history. And one of the things we've seen in history is there's been a lot of false starts. Either the county or TUD's predecessors. Tuolumne County Water District number 2 was formed in 1947 with the expressed goal of acquiring water rights. They never did it in their existence. They would start projects, they'd have some of them approved, some of them partly funded, and for whatever reasons they would change and go another direction. And I have personally find that very frustrating, so before I leave the district, one of the things I wanted to do, and Lisa was able to get a grant for it, is to put together a group of civic leaders and interest groups. There's about 25 in this group, And we sat down and we had a couple of meetings. We're going to have our third one Friday at TUD, if you'd like to come by in the morning. I don't remember the time. At 9 o'clock. The public's welcome. And at the first meeting, this group got together and said, okay, what do we want to have as far as a water supply vision for Tuolumne County? And the group picked that we want to have a 100-year vision, but with a 25-year plan of action. So in the next 25 years, what can we do to start building our water supply forward so we don't get in this position again? And at the second meeting, people were asked, and also at the first meeting, we listed 7 problems. What are our problems? And we need to find solutions for these problems. And so we listed these 7 major problems. Then at the second meeting, people brought forth their possible solutions. And the idea was that everyone could throw something on the table, or anyone could. And then at this third meeting, we're going to rank them and vote on them and try to put them together. And as a group that includes environmental organizations in our community, building, chamber, the county, master gardeners, farm bureau, we pretty much tried to pick the whole cross-section. And then this group's going to say, this is what we think. And then we're going to come out and have forums like this and present those problems and solutions, and then ask for your opinion, take that back to TUD board and get them to choose a direction that I hope sticks longer than 4 years of a board member. So if you go to yourwaterchoices.com, you can find a website that we've set up that shows you can read history, you can read who's involved, you can read what the problems are, what the potential solutions are, and you can provide feedback. And I would really like to encourage you to do that. That's my sales pitch. And I think, Tom, you're up next.
I'll just tag on that sales pitch. You know, one of the reasons we're sitting here today at a drought forum trying to figure out if we have enough water is because of some of those false starts in the past, but we have an opportunity now as a community to move forward in a way where we don't find ourselves in this situation 50 years from now. And so I'd encourage you to get involved. If you didn't catch this from Tom's presentation, last year was bad, and this year our water supply is in an even worse state. Last year we made it through, and largely because we conserved a lot. We required 50% last year, and we're requiring 30% this year. And so the question that at least I get asked all the time is, do we have enough? Are we going to make it through this year? Do we have enough water? And when I'm talking about do we have enough, I'm not talking about do we have enough to run through the sprinklers. What we're trying to do is protect the most important things of life. We want to make sure we have enough water to drink, to cook with, that we have enough water to flush the toilet. I don't want you to get too graphic, but think about if you couldn't flush your toilet for 5 days, what that might do to your health and to your house. And we want to make sure we have enough water to fight fire with, because that is a very, very big concern for us. So do we have enough to protect those? The answer is yes. But how are we going to do that? Well, one, you may ask yourself, well, why are we requiring 30% instead of asking for 50% like we did last year? Well, we've done a lot since last year, and you've heard Tom talk about some of the new system improvements that were funded by the state for TUD, the Matlow Reservoir, the Mill Villa well treatment. Twain Harte also installed a well. So we've put some new system improvements in since last year that help us more reliably deliver that safe water. We've also, and when I say we, just know that I'm not talking for Twain Harte, but I'm talking for TUD as well, and I'm a customer. Twain Harte is a customer of TUD. The water comes from the same spot. So we're all in this together. There's a lot of system-wide adjustments that have been made. Twain Harte's made some new recycling things to recycle some of their water. TUD, we've all learned a lot more about how we can operate our system in the most efficient manner to make sure that we get the water where it is needed the most. And I'm talking about the essential uses, that what I was talking about before, the safety, the health, the fire safety. And then also, we've worked hard to obtain regulatory waivers. So I think Tom may have mentioned this, but there's a regulatory waiver approved to lessen the fish flows out of Lyons so that water lasts longer for us through the summer and through the year. So yes, those are some of the things that we do. And then everybody's favorite topic is what else do we do to protect the essentials? Conserve. right? How many of you had a bucket in your shower last year, or maybe right now? All right, I did too. How many of you really enjoyed that? Nobody? Okay, too bad. Unfortunately, the bad news is that we do need to do it all again. We need to put the buckets in our showers. We need to make sure that we conserve enough to make sure that everybody has enough for the basics of life. The good news is that we know we can do it. Our community is an amazing community. We know what it's like to come together in emergencies. Unfortunately, we've had a few too many emergencies in the last 3 years, but we know what it's like. We know we can do it, and we need to do it again. So how do you do it? Well, I'm going to give you a couple of practical ways. I think the best way of conserving water is the way that doesn't impact your lifestyle. So not necessarily putting your bucket in your shower. The number one way I'm going to say you can conserve is fix your leaks. You may not know you have a leak, but you may have a leak. You know that your faucet dripping, your shower, that little drip, you may think that's not a big deal. That could add up to about 450 gallons a month. Same thing with toilet leaks. We found a lot of toilet leaks in my district that people didn't know. They couldn't hear, they couldn't see. They put those little blue tablets in. There's some available in the back of their tank, and their toilet becomes blue. Sometimes some of those leaks were up to 3,500 gallons a month, and people didn't even know they had them. And it's about a $10 fix. That's water that's not getting any use. It's going straight down the drain, and you don't even get a longer shower out of it. So I encourage you, both TUD and Twain Harte, we have free toilet dye tabs, those ones I was just discussing. There's some in the back. I get some and check them every year. I had 2 leaks last year I had no idea I had. What else can you do? Appliances. Upgrade your appliances. Upgrade your toilets, your washers. Install those aerators on your sinks. All of those make a huge difference, and you don't even know that you're actually using less water than you normally do. There's a couple of things right there. If you install low-flow fixtures, 1,500 gallons per month. Just a personal thing, I have not been putting a bucket in my shower over the last 2 months. I just got my bill. I have 4 people in my household, and we were at 26 gallons per person per day, which is very, very low if you don't know. I think the State Water Board says 55 gallons is the bare bones. And that's not because I don't shower. I have all low flow in all of my appliances, and it makes a huge, huge difference. And both Twain Harte and TUD have free low flow shower heads, aerators, and TUD offers a toilet rebate. And if you're looking for rebates to try to upgrade some of these things, the Tuolumne County Resource Conservation District just received, or it was just awarded, a $3 million grant through the Integrated Regional Water Management Program that's a region-wide across the entire county to provide rebates for things like toilets, appliances, gray water systems, rain harvesting, turf buyback, a whole slew of things. It's not available now. Please don't call Resource Conservation District because I'll get in trouble for saying this. But it should be coming out very soon, maybe hopefully by the end of the summer or sometimes midsummer. That will be available to all of us. The other thing is that the state, through the governor's executive order, also is doing a turf buyback program, and I'm told that may be available to our county sometime maybe around July 1st. So there's help out there to help us to convert over to use it more conservatively. Other ideas, we talked about the bucket. There's all kinds of creative ideas of how you can use water more efficiently. This is an amazing website. The state is putting a lot of money into communication for the entire state. I know you're all pros because we all did it last year, but there might just be another idea on there that can help you get that extra little bit. And so this is saveourwater.com. It has a lot of good ideas about how to reduce your water use. And then, of course, you can always go to our website, twainhartecsd.com or tudwater.com, and there's also some good ideas on there. So with that, that's the water supply of the presentation. Sherri, did you want to hold questions to the end?
Yeah, I'd like to let everyone have a chance. So.
Okay.
Lisa, did you have anything to add to that?
No, just if you haven't been to the TD website, the state regulations are changing right now daily. They have not been implemented, but we're trying to post everything as much as possible. So if you hear things in the media and you're not quite sure, anything that's relevant to customers or the community will have to put on our website.
So with that, I'd like to thank Tom, and Lisa. And please do hold your questions. We'll have a chance for questions at the end of all the presentations. But next, I would like to introduce Rob Kostlivy. Rob is Tuolumne County Environmental Health Director.
Can you hear me? Oh, perfect. I don't have to hold this thing. I know. I have been scolded several times for my pacing ability, so having a microphone in a standalone place will help eliminate some of that. How many have heard me speak before? Okay, well, my condolences. Typically, well, you guys know I start off with some sort of joke or a funny story, and this time I'm gonna go a different route. I've timed how long it takes me to deliver that joke, and the long part of it is typically waiting for you guys to stop laughing. So what we're going to do today is something completely different, and I promise at the end of this presentation you will see the nexus, the connection from what you're about to see till the end and what you see in Tuolumne County. Now there is sound. Some of it's going to be subtitles. Some of it's going to be in Spanish, I believe.
Aguas más principal. Desde aquí resulta bien lejos llegar. Y a veces en el pozo, hay veces se llevan de ahí abajo, creo que se llevan agua y hay veces llegamos, no hay ni agua vaciosa hasta que se pozo de ahí también agua. ¿Y dónde van a traer? No se puede. Agua siempre es para todos. Agua es vida, como dice. Machu, suita, suita, Vanessa, ya por si aquí. Pues una muerte, no podíamos cómo salvar, ya no, que dice que ya está contaminado y no se puede. Agua para lavarnos, para tener aguas para que no haya un contagioso, contaminado, entonces para defenderse de la enfermedad.
Vanessa is 8. Her brother died because, like a billion other people around the world, her family doesn't have access to safe water. Every day, her parents have to walk a mile down the cliffs of El Alto to collect water from an unreliable well. Yet they can hear the sound of rushing water from their backyard. They live just a few hundred meters from their city's main water treatment plant and can see millions of gallons just beyond the barbed wire fence.
Todos los seres vivos necesitan del agua para vivir. Sin agua morirían las plantas, los animales y las personas. Papi, para mirar agua, ¿por qué vivimos tan cerca y no tenemos agua nosotros? Podemos estar aquí en su puertita, pero no es, cuando uno no tiene plata, no le da fácil. Porque somos bolivianos y no tenemos esa posibilidad de tener agua. Entonces todos los que tienen plata no más.
For Vanessa's father, Lino, it's simple economics. The mains pipe runs just a few meters from the family's home, but the connection fee charged by the French-controlled water company is as much as he earns in a year. But for Vanessa, it's about more than just money.
No tengamos. Porque no tengo agua, tengo frío. No tengo agua y no como baño. Que no me salga más. Desde que soy negro, nadie quiere jugar conmigo. Y cuando quiero jugar con alguien, los chicos que me asustan no quieren que juegue.
If kids go to school and they're dirty, then there's a huge social stigma attached to that. They're called dirty Indians and dirty peasants. So there's the social stigma, and there's the very real knock-on effects of drinking dirty water, getting diarrhea, not being able to wash your hands, having to decide with your one barrel of water what you're going to do with it. Are you going to wash clothes? You know, you might prioritize washing your body or washing your kids, but then what happens with the clothes?
What do you think? How many parents in here? How does that make you feel? As a father myself, it absolutely breaks my heart. As a human being, it crushes my soul. I mean, I've seen this video several times, and it's hard to speak right after seeing something such as that. But do you think in Tuolumne County anything like that would happen here? Do you think that's possible in our county? Well, just a few hundred miles away, Tulare County, we have 7 times the permit applications in Tulare County. Their county board of supervisors just approved a county-sanctioned well so folks can have water. How about a little closer to home? Let's reel this in. This is from the news today. Halfdone's going to open 3 weeks early. Tom mentioned earlier today about the snowpack. That's critical for our survival here. What do you not see there? Why do you think they're able to open up this Halfdone Summit 3 weeks early? Because there's no snow. Well, let's even bring this closer in. Let's reel this in tighter. Tuolumne County. These numbers right here are accurate till today. This is what we have. We have approximately 203 homes that are impacted because of this drought since January of 2014. 203 homes. Imagine how many people are in those homes. Perhaps there's some of those people in this room here tonight. On March 17th, I went in front of the Board of Supervisors and indicated that we had 83 homes that were impacted. As of today, that's a 61% increase to where we're at today. We have 137. That's huge. That is a huge increase in just over a month. This is very similar to the map that you see on the board, but this one is the most current and the most up-to-date of what we have permitted and what we have seen out in the field, whether people's springs have gone dry or their wells or other types of water issues that they're having. It kind of looks like a skittled map. There's various colors. They represent different things. You're welcome to take a look on the board later on this evening, and I'll be glad to explain in detail what these mean. But essentially, each one of those dots represents a water source of some sort. They don't represent how many homes are connected to them. So from my previous slide, you got to imagine there's 203 of those, along with all the lives that are impacted because of the lack of water. Now, my goals for this presentation are pretty simple. It's how did we get here? What can we do as well users? And what can we do if you encounter an issue with your well? How many folks are on a well in this audience? Quite a few of you. In fact, this is probably the highest number that I've seen in any of these presentations. So in order to figure out where we're at in our county, we need to dive a little deeper into what Tom was describing earlier in regards to our watershed. So essentially, this is our really simplified version of our water cycle. Tom has already discussed how the watershed works on the surface. My job is to look at below the surface, what's going on. And as the lack of this snowpack that we're seeing, we're seeing a lack of water percolating to the ground. Now, in a typical drought cycle, the first bodies of water that are impacted, that's your surface waters. You see those immediately. Absolutely immediately. Then 3 to 4 years later, you start seeing an impact in the groundwater. And we are in that 3 to 4 year time frame right now. So how this water cycle works, really simple. Precipitation falls to the ground, it collects, it percolates through just like a coffee maker. It's going to be filtered through the various sedimentation that our soil and rocks and geology has, and it makes its way into typically some sort of aquifer. And I hear that term all the time, and particularly when people are talking about Tuolumne County. My neighbor must be tapped into the same aquifer as me. Aquifer. Well, what exactly does that mean? Now, and really, in order to really understand what we have in Tuolumne County, we need to understand what we have in the valley and then compare the two. So a really crude example is this bathtub right here. And we have it halfway full of sand, halfway full of water. So if I were to place 100 straws in that bathtub and pull out with equal pressure, I'm going to get 100 identical results. If I put 1,000 straws in, I'm going to get 1,000 identical results. 1,000,000 straws, 1,000,000 identical results, as long as there is water in there to extract. And this is called an alluvial type basin. It's everywhere where you see it go in the valley, anywhere in the big farming areas. This is what you see. Up here in Tuolumne County, we have something known as fractured rock. Now, the same bathtub, but now we fill it halfway full of bricks, halfway full of water. But this time, the only place you're going to find water is in these joint lines. So you put those same 100 straws in here, you're going to get potentially 100 different results. You put 1,000 in, potentially 1,000 different results. 1,000,000, potentially 1,000,000 different results. Here is another cartoon example of this fractured rock system that we have up in Tuolumne County. So you see the more fractures you have going through, and you have a vertical well. This right here is our vertical well here. There's not that many fractures going through it, and it's considered a low-yielding well. Over here, there's a lot of fractures intersecting this well. And also, there's a lot of recharge capabilities because it's near a surface water, a water source that could potentially recharge this. And I've given you some really crude examples of what a fractured rock system looks like. This right here is actually a more accurate depiction. So we have this. True fractured rock, what we see up here. You have a large fracture coming from the surface, making its way down. Large fracture here. You have other vertical fractures coming through here. So if we were to place a well and we had similar fractures like this coming through here, we're going to get a higher yielding well. And conversely, compared to over here, you don't have that large numbers of fractures. So what does that mean? Essentially, when we start looking at depletion of waters in California, we see a pull from what the typical normal is. For instance, predominantly we have in California 60% of all water use is from surface water. That's in a normal year. In a drought year, it gets reversed. We start relying more on groundwater. You've already seen this picture, and I think the star of this is actually in this room here tonight. I think I. Oh, that's Dennis. Oh, is that Dennis? Okay. Well, essentially, this is kind of showing an example of pulling more groundwater out in lieu of the surface water, because we are lacking that. And what I'm hearing, from these forums is this next question: is using groundwater a bad idea? I hear that all the time. And in Tuolumne County, and I'm only going to focus here on Tuolumne County, it's not. All of our utility districts are very responsible. They look at this as diversifying essentially their portfolio. I heard this from one of our utility districts. I got to give Tom credit on this. Is when he said that, I was like, okay, man, that really makes sense, because in drought years you can rely a little more on the groundwater, and in normal years you go back to the surface water. And as long as you do that in a cohesive fashion, you're going to be okay. The one problem that we all need to address, and you've heard it here many times, probably not in the fashion that you're about ready to see here, with my electric car, it's recharge. I've already told you once that there's a lag time between water, precipitation getting into the sky, falling to the ground, and recharging our fractured rock aquifers. So when we start seeing rain again, the surface water is going to recover first. It's still going to be another 3 years before that groundwater starts to recharge. So we're not out of the boat at that time. And the example I like to use in regards to this photo right here is, you have an electric car. You can go 1,000 miles on an 8-hour charge. If you can only charge for, say, half that time on a 4-hour charge, it's pretty safe to say you're only going to go about half that distance. And then if you can only charge again for half of that, a 2-hour charge, you're only going to go about 250 miles, and so on and so on. If you don't get that full recovery, that full charge, you're not going to have the expected means out of it. And those folks that are on a well, that means not abusing your well. Just because you're on a well, I hear it all the time. People say, well, I'm exempt. I don't have to conserve that 30%. I don't need to do that. And we have a well driller in the room right now, and I guarantee you, you're seeing a lot of folks without water. So what do you do? I mean, what are some of the signs of an impacted well? First one is real obvious. It's a loss of water at the tap, or you get air in the lines. So when you turn on the tap, it starts spitting at you. You might see a change in pressure, change in appearance, change in taste and smell. And one of the ones that kind of sneaks up on people is a increase in your utility bill. All of a sudden, your bill might be 2 to 3 times as high as it normally is. And you scratch your head, try to figure out, well, why is that? It's because your pump is continually cycling on and is trying to pump water that's not there. Now, this is a real-life photo from one of my inspections. Change of appearance. It was coming out of the tap that way as well, in the sink. One I saw on Friday. Sorry for the toilet paper in this thing, but this is what I came upon. And this is absolutely gray. First time I've ever seen gray water coming out of an appliance such as this. And the odd thing is, yesterday I had another inspection, and the owner of the property said, well, up in his bathroom, his toilet water turned gray, that was odd to see two in a very close proximity of each other. So I'm wondering what's going on there. So what do you do when you experience any of these problems? You call our hotline. Contact Environmental Health. You can contact Tracie. Her card's in the back. You can contact any of our panel members here, utility districts, your board of supervisor. You can contact ATCAA. Anyone is going to be willing to help, and they will pass on that information to me. I'm going to let Darrell talk about our well assistance program after I'm finished speaking. And one thing that we truly need to do in California is change the way we view water. And essentially, water is water. Let the end justify the means. So if I'm collecting rainwater, I should be able to flush my toilet with it without having to go through any huge regulations. Because right now, if I wanted to use rainwater to flush my toilet, I would have to test it, monitor it every day, and submit those results. Who's going to do that? That's going to prohibit anybody from trying to do the right thing. We're working on some legislation right now to change that. And we want to bring back the 4 R's that we saw in the 80s. And this is from the solid waste terminology. Reduce, reuse, recycle, restore. Both Toms have talked about how to reduce. That's conservation. That's real easy. Reuse. You can utilize that water twice, 3 times, depending on how you want to go about it. For instance, at my house, I put in a gray water system, and I'm able to essentially water all my vegetation, and I'm diverting 72,000 gallons of water away from my septic system on an annual basis. That's huge. That's a lot. Recycle. Recycling is taking water, and there's a difference between recycling and reusing. You're actually treating the water now. So if you were going to use shower water for an indoor use, you'd treat it to some extent, but you shouldn't have to bring it up to drinking water standard to flush your toilet. Simple as that. So Assemblyman Gatto is working on some legislation, AB 1463. I encourage you to take a look at that. Just a quick couple slides here. What are some of the effects of depleted aquifers? And I am going to consider fractured rock in this situation a semi-aquifer. And so you get fracture deposition. So essentially, as you saw in my example of the bathtub, the bricks are pretty sturdy, pretty sound. But what happens is if you start depleting that well, those fractures are open. They don't have that hydraulic viscosity flowing through there, so you end up with debris starting to fill those, and when that debris starts to fill them, it retards any water from actually getting back into your water system. So that's one of the effects. And once again, that's this picture right here. Real simple. Now the valley subsidence. Has anybody ever heard of subsidence before? Okay, it's a pretty cool phenomena. Here's a great photo, and when you look at it, you might not understand the significance of this photo. So essentially, in 1925, the soil was up here. The ground has dropped a foot a year to where this picture was taken in 1977. NASA has come out with studies recently that is indicating this is completely true. They're seeing a foot of drop of subsidence every year. We had the environmental health director for Merced County and their OES director with us on Monday, and he's dealing with subsidence in his county, and they're looking at like 6 feet over the last 5 years. PG&E is having issues with power lines in the Fresno area where they're actually dropping, and they have to shore those up. Now, in closing, how many remember Vanessa from that video? It's kind of hard to forget, isn't it? Well, just a few months ago, I received a phone call from a teacher in our county. And she was inquiring about our drought assistance program. So I gave her the rundown, and then I was waiting for, I need assistance, I need help. That's not what I got. I got something completely different. Something that actually kind of rocked my world a little bit. She said, I have a student in my class that hasn't bathed in months. Can you help? So when you think of that Bolivia example video, thinking that it's a third world country so far away, so far removed, it's not. It's right here in your backyard, right in our county. So in actual closing, one more closing slide. What's in the future for us? NASA has predicted that water is going to run out, surface water, by 2016 unless we get some huge rainfalls. And they're also predicting that we're going to be in a mega drought. So we need to still steady the ship, and make sure that we can serve as much as we can. Thank you.
So I want to thank Rob for his presentation and acknowledge Rob's passion for what he does. He's a very passionate man. But some of you may have heard me say no when he, brought up the story about the little girl in Bolivia. And the reason I said no is because of Rob and his team and the next presenters, because we have, in my view, such an amazing team in Tuolumne County that were leaders in the state on OES and responding and finding opportunities for all the citizens in Tuolumne County. And so I want to congratulate them on the efforts that they've led and introduce Tracie Riggs, who heads up OES, and Darrell Slocum with ATCAA, and they're going to fill you in on what some of what is available for folks that are having trouble with water.
Thank you. So as Supervisor Brennan said, I'll stand up here. I'm seeing people peek around. Hover over everyone else back here. I'm Tracie Riggs. I'm with the Department of our Office of Emergency Services. The Office of Emergency Services in Tuolumne County is actually in the County Administrator's Office, and the Director of Emergency Services for our county is actually the board chair. And then we have the county administrator is the assistant director, and then you have me as a coordinator. And that's exactly what I do. I coordinate resources for emergency services. So I'm just going to go over a few things, and then we're going to defer to Darrell to explain the program that we have for wells here in our county. First of all, in the back, I'm hoping you'll take advantage of the handouts that are on the table there as soon as you walk in. And then in the very back are some that Lisa brought in with Tuolumne Utilities District. Along with you have the little tabs and low flow shower heads. So go ahead and take a look at those. Those are there at no cost. So in the back as well is our water intake form, and I'll kind of get to that. But first of all, I want to make sure everyone knows that in February of 2014, the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors did declare a local state of emergency due to drought. They've renewed that same declaration every 30 days thereafter as required by the CalOES regulations. That's important because it does allow us to apply for assistance when needed. So when the governor gave his executive order in September of 2014, where he was authorizing the California Disaster Assistance Act funding for homes who have no running water due to drought, we already had that proclamation in place and could immediately then submit an application, and we were approved immediately within that week. We then reached out to a private nonprofit, ATCAA, and asked them to act on behalf of Tuolumne County to help serve those in need, and they immediately said yes. And our county council, who was amazing, was able to get a draft MOU in place, the first one in the state of California, and we were able to get that project going, that program. So we have several different ways that we've approached drought this year. We do have drought task force meetings. You may not know it, but I believe there are 138 small water companies in Tuolumne County. That's a lot of water companies in our little area. As you know, we have the larger Tuolumne Utilities District, Twain, Harte, Groveland, but those others, some of them serve as low as, what, Rob, 5, up to as large as what you would have with TUD, five homes. And some of them are mobile home parks. Some of them are like the Peppery it has their own water system. So what we do is we invite each of them into a meeting on every month, and we sit down with them along with various state and federal agencies to see how we can assist them. So far, I believe there have been 2 or 3 water systems who have now experienced problems as a result of the drought. What we've done with the large systems, you've seen some of the projects we're able to help facilitate with both TUD, Twain, Harte, Groveland Community Services District, and the large system that we're working with right now is Lake Don Pedro. They were originally slated to run out of water May or June due to various changes such as the fish flows and some other their own drought conservations. We are now looking at October, but they still could run out of water in October, so they're drilling some wells, and again, some state and federal agencies working hand in hand to make sure that we meet the needs of those customers. Then we get to our wells. As Rob said, we have about 200 homes that have been affected in various ways, And this Well Assistance Committee that we have created, they have oversight on this program. And many individuals at this table are on that committee, as well as our county council, state water board, Cal OES, and I'm trying to think if there's, and public health. And each of these individuals review those water intake forms. And as I said, we have some in the back. Water intake forms are the very first contact that anyone will make that they're having a problem with surface water and or well. And the reason I say that is we do have the one that Rob shared about the family that was having problems with the child that hadn't bathed was actually a surface water. It was a spring that was no longer providing adequate water. So with that, anytime that intake comes in, Rob or his staff immediately go out. They do an assessment personally. Then he then brings those to this Well Assistance Committee, and we look at those for two reasons. We're looking to see, can we get a permanent connection? We're working with the State Water Board and Department of Water Resources. They have funding available. So far, we have 23 in the works with Tuolumne Utilities District for permanent connections at no or very low cost to the homeowner. We have another 3 projects I think we've submitted that we're working on right now. So as those come in, we're looking at various ways, and these are current residents. When we've had questions about new development, these are people who already live here that we're trying to find permanent connections so that we can then look to those who have no other alternatives. Many of you know that there are many places in our county that there's nowhere else that there are no public utility systems close that can serve them. So then we look at the temporary water system or temporary connections that we can work on with them. And with that, I'll turn it over to Darrell so he can tell you about the temporary water connections and how that's working.
Thank you, Tracie, and good evening, everybody. First, I want to compliment all of you for being here and taking the initiative to become educated on this particular subject, which is extremely complicated. And it's been somewhat of a depressing evening, some of the things we've had to talk about. So I want to point out something very positive, which is the collaborative effort that came together to allow us to provide assistance to those in need in our community. It happened very quickly, the collaboration between the county, ATCAA, and TUD, so much so that we were operating sometimes without approval as it pertained to what needed to be done. And I give the county a lot of credit for stepping up and Tracie and her staff in taking care of our residents. There was one particular situation where ATCAA incurred about in excess of $20,000 in costs that the state did not allow, and the county had to step up and pay that, which they were not happy about. None of us were, but the reality is that the resident got taken care of, and that's very, very important. So I would like all of you to feel good about that collaboration as well. ATCAA's role is, number one, to kind of serve as the bank as it pertains to being a liaison between the state funding and to facilitate the program. Tracie and Rob both laid out the procedure itself, and once the residence has been approved, then ATCAA steps in, employing contractors, which actually go out to the site. And there's a couple things that can happen. Number one, if the location has an actual water tank in place now, then we can just start to make water deliveries into that particular tank. If not, we can make arrangements to have a tank delivered and set up to keep them up and operating. And then, of course, as already been mentioned, we're also working on long-term solutions because we've already heard from Cal OES that this program is not going to last forever, and we need to start thinking about long-term solutions. So we're first and foremost, we're taking care of the people and making sure their household is still up and operating. In some instances, that may mean delivering bottled water to them until we can get a more permanent solution in place. And then determining their proximity to the TUD and whether a long-term connection is appropriate. And if not, we're still getting them product, so the household is up and running. There is no cost for this particular program, and there are no income requirements as it pertains to qualifying for the program, with the exception of if you are a landlord and we're talking about rental houses, then there is a procedure where we have to do some qualifications and vetting as it pertains to determining whether that landlord has the ability to pay for the connections, etc. Beyond that, The program has been very effective. The people who are on it, meaning the residents that are utilizing the program, are very happy that they get to continue living in their house, because that's kind of the thing that we miss here, is that without acceptable potable water, the house is not inhabitable. And so without this program, we would have people that would be looking to live with relatives or find temporary housing or some other solution. And I'm sure you can imagine what that would be like to be faced with something like that. So we continue to work on the program, improve it. Rob has some help now. Rob was running pretty ragged for a while, and he was very responsive, meaning he would get a call, and in most instances, he was out to the property that day to see what was going on, and that can be very comforting to the resident as well. Part of what we want to convey to the group tonight is to keep your eyes and ears on alert as it pertains to if you yourself have any problems with water supply at your household, or if you have a neighbor or someone that you know about that experiences any kind of a problem, have them contact Rob's office to get an assessment done to find out whether they qualify or not. Even though we're doing advertising and we've been on the radio and in the newspaper, et cetera, we don't want to miss anybody who gets up one morning and turns on that faucet and something bad happens. We want them to know where they can reach out and who they need to contact. Did I do a good enough job of explaining the landlord situation with the, right? Because that's probably the most complicated part of it as it pertains to the financial part. Because otherwise, if it's just a homeowner's primary residence, they don't have to worry about a cost associated with the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Darrell. And next we're going to have a fire update from Barry Rudolph, Battalion Chief with CalFire.